Welcome, everybody. This is Jeff St. Laurent, and this is the Tuesday call. And today's topic, Facebook went down. Now what do I do? There's no social media. And this is going off of, at least if you're watching this now, yesterday, Facebook went down for like, I don't know how long, 6 hours or something like that, according to where I was. And like completely down worldwide. And it was just weird. If you're not don't care about Facebook, then it doesn't matter. But today's topic is not necessarily about Facebook. It's about social media in general. But it's about building a long-term viable business, being independent of social media, even if we utilize it on a daily basis. But with that being said, I do record all of my live shows and I put them in my university on my website, sellingcoaching.com. Check that out. I help coaches transition to a full-time business. I have a lot of great resources there, especially if you check out my university at sellingcoaching.com. You can check that all out there. One of which, great resource if you want to start off right on the homepage, which I'd recommend. Even if you're not necessarily interested in that resource, if you enter your name and email, you'll get my audio resource called Launching Your Coaching Business, the First 3 Vital Steps. But even more importantly, it's going to put you into my email community, which is where I share some great information on a weekly basis, help you out, stay in touch, stay connected, and also let you know about some great programs that I'm offering. One thing of right now, if you're watching this live, I'm running another 5-month group mentor coaching program. I'm launching that next week. I'm putting something right now in the chat if you're watching this live. If you're watching the recording of this, then you can just look down below. There should be a link to learn more about my 5-month GoPro Elite group mentor coaching program. But I do have a couple spots left with that program. So if you're interested in that, definitely take a look at that now. Once you enter your name and email, once you click that link, if for whatever reason you're not interested right now, I'll definitely notify you when I'm doing another one. So with that being said, Facebook went down yesterday. And so it was very interesting because even now I'm broadcasting live and I broadcast live from Facebook, and but it's interesting because I'm not just talking about myself, but I'm thinking most people most businesses, most coaches utilize social media. And we utilize social media in all different capacities, but a lot of interaction and communication in our audience and staying in front of people is on social media for a lot of people. And as an example, I have a private Facebook group, my Selling Coaching private Facebook group, which just you can see in my website, sellingcoaching.com, right at the very top. You can find a link towards it right there. But I've had that, God, I don't even know, like 5-6 years, etc. I've got almost 3,000 people in that. And that's a very great, viable way for me to not only get in front of new people as they join my group and create conversations, but stay in front of that audience, right? So I've built an audience there. So as an example, if Facebook goes away, like it did for 6 hours, right? But what if it never came back on? Now, we know it's going to come back on, right? But what if something happened where it didn't? What if there was a violation or something happened that for whatever reason, the government, banned Facebook, just you're not going to reopen? I don't know, right? Or how about this? What if it on a smaller scale, like I said, I have a Facebook group, right? And what all of a sudden if Facebook groups changed or for some reason they did away with Facebook groups because they've got this new thing and, the 3,000 or maybe in years from now, the 5,000 people that I have in that group, like all of a sudden I can't access them. And this isn't just Facebook, right? This is any social media platform, LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever you're utilizing, YouTube, a YouTube channel, right? And it'd be hard pressed. How about this? It's hard pressed to think that something like a Facebook platform or a YouTube platform, which is just so huge and such a piece of a fabric of society. It just is nowadays. And it's even going to be more so as the Instagrams and other social media outlets that develop as new generations come up, like TikTok as an example, where I don't know how old TikTok is, but it's really started to take its presence more over the last several years. But regardless of that, it's hard pressed to think that any of that would go away. But with that being said, and I wish I had a few off the top of my head, even in the last 6 years of doing business, I've seen some social media platforms come in and take off and completely go away, or some come in and take off and then like you don't hear much about them anymore. It doesn't mean they don't exist, but it just doesn't mean And so my message today is you've got to make sure you are really good about how you grow your audience and how you stay in front of your audience. Because as I wrote in my email yesterday, if you're in my email community, you would have received that. If not, like I said, go to sellingcoaching.com, enter your name and email on that front page, not only just for that resource, but to get in my community. The reason I want you there is because I want to be able to communicate with you no matter what, right? And obviously I recommend email, and email is a fantastic way of doing that. It's a safe way of growing your audience. I'm not saying don't use social media. Absolutely use social media if that's your thing. It's a great viable way to stay in front of people. It's a great viable way to connect with new people. It's kind of like an online space for networking, because you could find people, you can find groups, you can find organizations, etc., that you can ask for help, that you can, potentially say, hey, listen, I saw this. I saw something about your group, and, hey, here's what I'm doing, and I thought I might be a good fit. Maybe do a presentation or talk for your group. Are you open for a conversation? So social media is fantastic like that. And yes, if you looked at my Facebook Messenger as an example, I'm primarily on Facebook, right? But this could be anything. It could be LinkedIn, etc. If you looked at my Facebook Messenger, right? I mean, I go there on a regular basis, and I'm interacting and having conversations with people. I've gotten business from there, right? And so that's how I communicate with people, right? So if you take that away, then, which is completely out of my control, right? It's completely out of my control. And like I said, it's hard pressed to think that it would just go away, but there's changes that are happening all the time that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the platforms are, how they're evolving. And I've had some changes happen over the years that I'm like, oh, geez, I don't like that anymore. Or the algorithms that the social media outlets have, that all of a sudden they change that thing. And this is whether you're just posting there on a regular basis, free marketing, or especially if you're doing some paid stuff, right? So now everything changes, your exposure changes, and now all of a sudden you don't get the reach that you had before, right? And so the biggest aspect of business, my main piece to my whole message today, is the biggest aspect to this is quite simply, your business really is your ability to communicate with your audience on a regular basis. That's it. That's your business. Because if you can't communicate with them, then you don't have a business. Like I was finishing my thought a few minutes ago, and I said, when I wrote my email yesterday, I talked about my Facebook group, and I said, I'm like, if that just went away tomorrow, I'd be okay, because I have my audience, on my email. But I don't have everybody on my email. I try and get people over there, right? I do these shows. I say, what do I say? Hey, get over to my website, check this out, and enter your name and email address. I want you to be there so I can communicate with you. But, I don't know what percentage of people I have in my group that are over my email, but I'm constantly trying to get people over there as well. I love people in both spots. That's my circle of communication, right? But if that goes away, I still can communicate with people. I still have an audience, right? If I'm going to run a program, I'm offering something, like I said, right now I'm running a group program starting next week, right? Put the link in the chat. It's down below as well, right? But if I don't have and I can't promote it in my group, my Facebook group, or on social media, like, where am I going to promote it? If I don't have anything else, like, I have no one to promote it to. So if you spend years, building it, and that's all you have it on is a social media platform, and that changes or goes away or whatever, for whatever reason, or your ability to get in front of those people is modified where it's not as effective, that's going to greatly impact your ability to do business. It just is. That's a fact. Your business essentially goes away. And now you're just relying on whoever remembers you, right? And yes, there'll be people that remember you, but not everyone's going to be like, you're not, the timing for what you're doing isn't like right now for everybody, right? So not everyone that's going to be in your Facebook group or connected with you on LinkedIn, et cetera, and now all of a sudden you go away, guess what happens? There's going to be very few that go like, oh, where did Jeff go? Let me find him. Why isn't he communicating? They're just going to forget about you. Like, that's the reality. They're just going to forget about you. And hopefully you've made an impact enough where some wouldn't, and I will say some wouldn't, But if I just stopped broadcasting on a weekly basis, if I just stopped showing up, right? I mean, obviously my clients be like, dude, what's up? Or like some people that, follow me, like, I haven't seen you in a while. Is everything okay? Right? But the vast majority of people that I'm in front of, on a weekly basis, they're just going to forget about me. And you could feel bad or sad or whatever you want about that, but that's just the reality is of how it happens. That's why we do this on a recurring basis, on a weekly basis, and we market ourselves. I call this education-based marketing. I'm showing up. If I don't show up, you know what? You're going to forget about me, and that's just the reality of it. And so you've got to find a way where you can stay top of mind. And that's why it's so vitally important that you utilize your email list, that you start building that, from day one. And if you're thinking like, holy crap, like I haven't done that, a couple of my clients emailed me yesterday, as a result of my email about me saying this, like, you got to have an email list. And they're like, you know what, I have an email list because of you, and I've been building it for years, But if you don't have that, it doesn't mean, oh, it's too late to start. It means like we've got to start doing this. If you have questions about that and you're not sure how to get started, like send me an email, write something in the chat. Jeff, help me out. Private message me, go through sellingcoaching.com and shoot me an email at my contact page and say like, Jeff, I know you're talking about building an email list. I'm not quite sure about that. I can send you some resources on how to get started with that. Obviously, the people that I work with one-on-one in my groups, literally the first thing we're doing out of the gates outside of figuring your niche out, if you haven't already, is setting you up with an email platform. That's literally the first thing I do with every single client I've ever worked with, is because I understand, even if you've got a resistance around that, like you've got to have that set up as a vehicle communication, and you've got to utilize it on a weekly basis. Like that's just the bottom line reality of it. And so I hope today has been, all right, my hope is that yesterday when that went down, because it was kind of funny because I was on with a coaching client of mine, and we're working with the marketing plan, etc. And we did a little screen share. We went over to Zoom and we did a little screen share, and I was kind of helping them go through, just kind of brainstorming like where they can find their market. And they utilize Facebook a lot. And she's like, I can't get on Facebook. And I'm like, maybe your internet's slow, whatever. I'm like, let me get on, And then I tried my phone, and we're like, I think Facebook's down. It was just a weird thing. And I was going to do this event, and I had time set aside to set up my event for this show. And I'm getting on, and I'm like, usually I set up a Facebook event. I come up with the topic and title for my show, and then I go over to Aweber, which is my email platform, and I create my email and I send it out. And I couldn't get onto Facebook. And it was almost just like, what do I do? And then I'm like, and then it was funny because then I got an email from Aweber, which is, like I said, that's a platform I recommend. And guess what the email from Aweber said? It said, Facebook's down, now what? And obviously I'm like, oh my God, this is like a complete reinforcement of why email marketing is so important and what I teach all the time. That's why I love Aweber as well, because they're on top of that stuff, And then I'm like, what am I going to do for the topic of my show? Guess what? What's the title of the show? If you scroll to the left or look at the top here, it's like Facebook went down. Now what? Right? And that was the topic for the show because it's so vitally important. But the point is that we, if you don't know how to utilize and set that up. And if you're having apprehensions about utilizing email and oh, well, I don't want to be in people's faces and, I don't want to be bothersome and things like that. I understand that, right? And I'm not going to just say get over it and figure it out, but I will say it's something that we want to start to understand the benefits of it. Because I felt the same way when I started off, right? And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to send? I don't want to be too much in people's inboxes. I don't want to annoy people. I don't want people to unsubscribe. Like all the fears. Is what I have to say valuable enough, etc. Then I started sending out emails. And I started getting a response, and I started seeing the benefits of it. I started getting clients, etc. And it felt good because I felt like I was in front of my people, and I had a way of expressing and communicating with them. If you can't communicate with your audience, what are you doing in your business? Like that's all businesses do, is they've got to have a market, and then they've got to stay in front of their market. So when the timing's right, they're top of mind, and someone buys. That's the nature of every business that's out there. I don't care what type of business you are in. And this isn't a super well thought out statement. I'm just trusting my instincts on this, right? I can't think of a business off the top of my head where the concept of like the fundamentals of your business is understand an audience, go after your audience, build an audience, and stay in front of that audience as much as you can, so that when the timing is right, they hire you, buy your service, or come into your store and buy your products on or offline, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, that's a concept of business, right? And so the question is what is our vehicle of communication, and how do we do that, right? And so yes, utilize social media, but just make sure you're utilizing email as well, because that's the one thing you have complete control over. And if I want to be in front of you and talk to you, guess what I can do? I can send you an email. And if you don't want it anymore, you can unsubscribe, right? That's the control that you have. But if I want to get in front of you, doesn't mean that you'll actually read it, but it's going to be in your inbox. And how many times a day do you check your email? I know I check mine quite a bit. Now with our mobile phones and everything like that, you know, like how many times you pick it up, just go, oh, we're getting new emails. And some people are good about that, and they you know, keep their boundaries, etc. But most people, most of the time, how many times do you check texts and emails? You know, it's not going away anytime soon. And so it's a viable way. Consider it if you're not doing it.